How many people here have ever micromanaged? Okay. How many people here have ever been micromanaged? Okay. You know what I mean? Like overdoing it and doing too much. And I was working with a leader in business who kind of couldn't be hands-off, couldn't delegate, and was micromanaging and was falling apart. He had to, through some coaching, he had to let go. And what happened is he had 3 responses from his people. When he finally said, I can't do it all, I need to let go and stop controlling everything, because it was basically a control issue. The 3 responses from 3 different types of people that were working for him were as follows. One group said, thank you, now we can operate. I got a full court game, I can be free and autonomous, and you trust me enough, I'm going to produce. It was a wonderful response. There was a second group that was like, I'm kind of out of my comfort zone. I don't like you nagging, but I also don't like, having my own structure, and they kind of showed up. It helped them. It stretched them out of their comfort zone. It made them produce more because they weren't used to making own decisions. They were fine. There was a third group that said, whoopee, mom's gone, we can have a party. And they didn't do very well because they needed some managing, and they were kind of against the structure, and they took advantage of that. And as we say in business, what happened was they found an opportunity to make another organization successful.
Dwight Bain here at the President's Luncheon at AACC. I had a chance to see my friend Dr. John Townsend. John was one of the co-authors of a book called Boundaries that really changed how America looks at setting limits in relationships.
That leaders are trained to say yes. Take on the task. Take on the mission. Take on the mandate, the initiative, the project, the BHAG, the stretch goal. But there's a point. There's a point where you have to say no.
I was working with a corporate executive on how he wanted to convey his passion for what he felt to his company, because that's one of the things that execs are supposed to do, to give people the virus for how they feel. So he's talking to the people he's responsible for, and he's trying to convey it, how he felt about the product and the service, and it was a great company. And I'm noticing as he's going on that the people are sort of checking out. They're not really getting it. They're looking kind of sleepy. And he noticed it too, and so what he did in response was he began amping up the energy. And he starts kind of pounding the desk. We're going to be number one. We are number one. We're the best. And he's almost like yelling at everybody, and it's not helping. And the people aren't checking in. They're still checking out. Well, as a consultant, I pulled him over to a sidebar, and I said, I think you need to land the plane here. And he said, what do you mean, land the plane? I said, well, the people aren't hearing you because you are not listening to what they need to hear, to say. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, passion is one thing. But people need to be drawn out as to how they feel and their context and what their struggles are and what they want and what they desire. They can't really hear your passion until they know that you have heard them.
Leaders are the most isolated people in the world. And I know that sounds strange because you're surrounded with people. But they're the most isolated people in the world. And here's why. Because leaders, when they're around people, are sourcing others, directing and guiding and managing and supporting and developing and strategizing and structuring and all that great stuff you're supposed to do with people you're trying to envision and prepare, right? You're sourcing. Is sourcing input or output? Sourcing is output. It's necessary. It's good. It's what leadership's about. But it's output. And my experience with leaders is that like a magnet, you guys gravitate toward the output sourcing relationships and do not have the input relationships.
He had one of those people, one of his managers, who was a real excuse sort of person. Every time he didn't get a report in on time, every time he was late to something, it was always someone else. And we call that rabbit trails. He was always taking his boss down rabbit trails, like, well, you're not resourcing me enough, that's why I'm late. Or you're not as supportive. Or I had bad traffic. Or the dog ate my homework. All the kind of things people make up to kind of excuse their behavior. And this person, this executive, was kind of getting sucked into it. He was like following the rabbit trails and never having anything constructive happen. So what I told him was, I'm going to give you 6 magic words. I need to get back to. I need to get back to. In other words, I'm the traffic cop. I've got to direct the flow of conversation. That's what leaders do. Leaders lead. I'm going to lead this conversation back to why I started this meeting, back to the agenda, back to this purpose. And that's not a mean thing to do. In fact, it helps him, it helps you, because all of a sudden there's a structure and there's an order to the conversation, and then problems get solved. Never forget the 6 magic words, and you'll have constructive, confrontive conversations.